Hello there. I'm Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz.
I'm Daniel Howat from Next Best Picture.
And I'm Joey Moser from The Contending.
We are here discussing the Oscar shortlisted short films. This is a great group of 45 films that every year the three of us, and I imagine some other people out in the world, try to make sure we see all of them and really get to know them. Only 15 will be nominated eventually, but it is an exciting time. I feel like I never properly get to talk about these with people who've actually seen everything. So I am very excited for this conversation. It's worthwhile to start with the documentary shorts because when it's always like they're 4 to 40 minutes. These are all 39 minutes, a lot of them very often. But I do think we have some very interesting selections this year. I'm always excited to see names that I recognize because it is fun to discover new people, but to have some sort of like regulars in the category. Jay Rosenblatt, for instance, was previously nominated for We Were the Bullies and for How Do You Measure a Year. He's back with Heartbeat, which is an even more personal film that's just footage of him and his wife 25 years ago finding out that they were pregnant. That's really interesting. He's very like mild mannered and low key, and I love the fact that he just presents stuff as it is and loves this archival stuff. And All the Walls Came Down is another one from Andy Timoner, who was on the feature documentary shortlist a couple years ago for Last Flight Home. That is, I think, very, very personal, and also something that has to get nominated in a lot of ways because there's all these LA people who did lose their homes. And even though they're not mostly in Altadena, I feel like it's something that's going to be very powerful and resonant, especially as we're recording this, a year and a day after the fires first started. So,
Yeah,
Joey, I feel like you pay attention a lot to the names we might know. Are there other names we're missing? I guess Josh Sheftel, I forgot, right? And All the Empty Rooms is another regular.
Yeah, he was nominated a couple of years ago for Stranger at the Gate. That was, I think that was a really polarizing short film. I think something to take into account with Doc if people are like new to like checking out shortlists and the short categories, like always look at Netflix, always look at the New Yorker. They are usually represented. Netflix, of the three branches of shorts, does very well in documentary, and they only had two eligible this year. The other one wasn't shortlisted. So sometimes they have like three or four, and like three of them get in. Sometimes they only have one, and they can focus, and one gets in. But yeah, there's some returning faces, some names like Abe mentioned. But yeah, I think it's worth mentioning the kind of like studios that also pop up here a lot.
yeah. Netflix has only missed once since 2016. I think it was 2 years ago. They weren't nominated in this category. So it's kind of like they've got one contender this year, All the Empty Rooms. You kind of have to predict it, and also it is for me. It was one of the best shorts on the short list as they chronicled the kind of aftermath of school shootings and the lives of these families who lost their children. Really powerful. So it's not only Netflix, so you got to bet on it. It's also good, which helps a lot. So that's definitely a strong contender.
I'm always intrigued to find ones where I try to go know nothing about them. And obviously for documentary, I don't care quite as much because I'm very often it's history or something that like doesn't it can't be spoiled in this or can be spoiled in the same way. It's interesting to see a lot of films that have to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict this year on the short list. We have two that are on the short films, and we have, of course, a few of the international feature contenders. But Children No More Were and Are Gone is certainly a powerful one. There's not necessarily as much happens in it. It's more just showcasing a
Mm-hmm.
silent protest movement. But as the film shows, protesting in silence, something without words, can be very powerful. And so I do know that an Orange and Jaffa was not nominated when it was shortlisted. So when we get to Butcher's Stain and the live action short, that'll be something to discuss. But it's not surprising to me that it made the shortlist. I think it's definitely something that people will be talking about and thinking about. There were also films that looked at Vietnam and the aftermath, which is very interesting because I feel like we're a lot further out from that. But On Healing Land, Bird's Perch was really interesting to me. I thought that was especially because I feel like very often we have different narratives that sort of come together. And so you see like here's what's happening here, here's how they meet. And this was one that was
Yeah.
very much separate about this the diverging paths. And while that leaves you wanting to know like did they watch this, like they're featured in this movie, did they watch it and then try to talk to the people? But I find that so interesting. Whereas We Were the Scenery is a completely different, more like entertaining piece of that. And it's always intriguing to have two films that are radically different, but about stemming from the same time period in conflict, even if they take such different paths.
Yeah, I felt like there were a lot of films on this short list that were the filmmakers were investigating their own family or exploring their own
Hmm.
family's relationship to something. I thought Bad Hostage was really interesting in the same vein because the director had this relationship to this family, her family, being taken hostage and then dissecting Stockholm syndrome. It was just really interesting to see the filmmakers being so deeply invested in the material themselves. It wasn't a lot of outside directors telling these stories, which is I feel like not so normal for the category.
Yeah, I was actually going to just mention that We Were the Scenery and what am I blanking? The one you just mentioned. We Were the Scenery and On Healing Land, Bird's Perch. I watched them back to back, not knowing anything about them, and I was just like, oh, okay, we're gonna keep talking about it. That's so it was so kind of surreal to um see the same subject matter but told in a completely different way, different runtime, different length. I also, Abe, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, I wonder if the other person, I would love to sit in the room and watch the other person watch the other side of this, like the same story that they're telling, because it's that was fascinating to me. It's also very gentle, very I don't know, it felt different than almost everything else that's on here.
I always like to ask filmmakers, who has seen this film? Because you never know. Like people watched it on the Academy screening
Hmm.
room, but where does it play in the world? People like us, we go to film festivals. I know I don't see a lot of shorts at festivals, but I find out about them after. And
Hmm.
so I just wonder where, how do these things go over in different places? Saying like Rovina's Choice, which is a real outlier from the rest of this, just because it's a different part of the world. It's very grim, as a lot of these often are, but it's certainly very enlightening. And you have something like Perfectly a Strangeness, which I think is the true outlier of the entire
Yeah.
category, that is a sort of found footage. I don't even know how to describe it, but it is definitely an intriguing film that reminded me in some ways of Hale County This Morning, This Evening, which was a documentary feature nominee, which if people like it, they really, really, really like it. And Oscar voters clearly did, but if not, it's the kind of thing that does require a lot more sort of to get into than, here's let's watch a documentary about actors in after Vietnam.
Yeah, Ravina's.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joey.
Sorry, go ahead.
Ravina's Choice was definitely the most traditional, I felt like, of these shorts because it's the most news reporting. That one really came across as an explainer, really explaining what's going on with USAID, and so I felt like it was very well done in that respect in communicating what's going on and being on the ground with what's going on, especially with showcasing that family. But it is the most traditional in that respect. So I'm not quite sure how that'll play with the Academy, but it is engaging.
I wonder with that one in particular, I was really kind of impressed that they were like, all right, we're immediately going to show you the effect of that aid being cut off. And I was like, all right, how, I'd be very interested to think about like the editing process of that, or like how quickly they shot it, because it really kind of feels like the subject itself is like, a giant water jug being knocked over and stuff is being spilled out of it, and you're trying to, lift it back up. And I don't, I do agree that it is very traditional, but I wonder if the sort of like generic anger around the country around the current administration may push people to vote for it,
Yeah.
because it's something, I don't know, people that they can say, we told you this would happen and look, it's happening and there's already a movie about it.
Yeah, it's the most
Um,
immediate in that
oh
respect.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder if I think just perfectly a strangeness. Um, wow, that is such a different film than everything else that's on here. It's different than stuff that it normally lands on here. Who knew that a doc was gonna make me want to watch EO? Do you guys like EO? Like, oh, I remember seeing that movie the year it came out. It was the last movie I saw that year because I couldn't watch anything else that day because it just like destroyed me. So I was like, oh, great, I'm having PTSD of watching that Polish film. It's great.
I shouldn't like Perfectly Estrangedness. Like, it's not at all the sort of film that I typically like. I, I found myself enjoying watching these donkeys, like hanging out, exploring space. I
Oh,
was
ears,
like,
yeah.
the ears,
The
you
ears. There's so many shots like right here on
know,
their head. Yeah.
just
Like, hey
flapping
guys, what's
around.
up?
And so I'm as shocked as anybody to say that I really dug that one, and because it is so drastically different. I am predicting that one to get nominated for that reason. Because of things like Hale County. It's exactly what I was thinking of when I was watching it. We just don't see docs like this, more experimental docs, on
Hmm.
either of the documentary shortlists. And for some reason, that makes me want to predict it more because it's just something we don't see very often.
I do. There's something nice about films that are nothing alike being nominated. My favorite Oscar stat is that Silence of the Lambs beat Beauty and the Beast for Best Picture. So I love that, there could be something so radically different. And I don't know which one is which in this category, but we were talking about, Rovina's choice and its sort of urgency and the fact that it is talking about government related kinds of things, which made me think a lot about two different shorts, one that is not a current thing and one that is. The Devil is Busy and Cashing Out. The Devil is Busy is like very immersive, very in there, like you're just seeing as it's happening. I really thought that was very impressive, and also just being able to like see the protesters come in and be like, oh, we know that guy and all that. Whereas Cashing Out felt like a chronicle of a time that was not that long ago, should feel a little bit more recent, but just like here's something that makes sense in a lot of ways, but also was really awful, and let's explore it. And so I don't know if the fact that that's not so current will count against it, but that for me was one of the most informative and interesting from this list, Cashing Out, just to be able to learn about all of that.
Hmm. You know what is so interesting about that is, um, for people that don't know, I'm a homosexual. Pretty obnoxiously gay. I describe myself. I read a lot of I got to an age where I read a lot of gay history. I have read and researched a lot of this particular time in history. I didn't know about this. The sort of investors coming in, and I thought that was really kind of cool. Like I know all the stuff of like the first time AIDS was mentioned in the news. I know all about like families that abandon a loved one. I know about that. I know about the AIDS quilt and things like that. But that um into the narrative of these people cashing out their life insurance policies to give themselves a better life for whatever time they had, I thought was an incredibly fascinating thing. Um, and to just mention, I was sort of blown away by The Devil is Busy. I was so uncomfortable. The sound design about hearing the people outside. Um, I don't know. I was really taken with that one. That's all I can say about that, I guess.
Yeah, I love both of those. Cashing Out. What was so fascinating about that is same. I had never heard of this aspect of the AIDS crisis, and it the way that they present this idea of cashing out the life insurance policies is fascinating because when they first mention it, it sounds so ghoulish, and then they really make you understand why they needed to do this, and also show the ghoulishness still of the people who decided to bet on these lives. So they show how complex this is. It isn't just good or bad. There are all these aspects to it. So I really found that one fascinating. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the familial connection was really interesting between the director telling this
Oh yeah.
story. Was really fascinating. Yeah.
I think it's simply because of the links thematically between these films that it's taken us this long to get to Classroom 4, which I think is a very strong contender for the Oscar because, especially after Sing Sing last year, which had a tragic Oscar run, unfortunately, I do think that this is a subject that's so interesting. And the idea that, we're seeing people who, especially for those who are incarcerated, this is a big risk, like having them recorded and seeing them at their most vulnerable. And there's something that just feels so accessible about it and the way that they're talking to each other and that nobody has an ego and they're so freely admitting all the things that they've done and that they'd like to improve. Like, I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing that. And so I think that was very, very worthwhile. Last Days on Lake Trinity was similarly, just people as they are. Joey, tell us more about your affinity for that one.
I can't control the looks on my face. It's I had no idea what that was about. I vaguely knew. And I that one devastated me. Um I think in general, we don't take care of older people in this country. I'm painting a with a broad brush here, but I mean that ending where that one woman, I think Nancy is her name, where every time you saw her, she was like, "I'm going to Pennsylvania, I'm going to Texas, I'm going here, I'm going there," and I was just like, I was so upset by the end of that film. The scene in the airport at the very end just like knocked me out. I had to like kind of get up and like walk around because I was like, Jesus. So I had personally had a very emotional response to that one.
Same. Yeah, I mean, I've taken care of a grandmother. My grandmother sort of started fading in her later years, and it reminded me so much of that. And my grandmother was well taken care of. It was a very different situation. But seeing Nancy, if in that airport, you're so right. That airport sequence was so just devastating. And especially, I loved the tone of the film because it starts very unassuming. You know that this sad thing is going on, but it has a lot of moments of lightness,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the devastating nature of it really sneaks up on you. And yeah, I really reacted very strongly to that one as well.
By my count, we have two films that we haven't mentioned at all, which again, we're just looking for a way to link to something. Armed Only with a Camera, I think, is worth talking about because I feel like, you know, reporters, that's a very big thing, especially in wars, and there will be people who have a strong response to that. Chasing Time is a more specific interest, I think, but it definitely is opens up. If you're not, that's not the kind of thing you pay attention to. I think it definitely is very eye-opening and enlightening. Did you guys have any thoughts about either of those two?
Yeah, Chasing Time is good and nice, but it's definitely more of it felt more. It's so intricately connected to the feature Chasing Ice that it did sort of feel like not quite its own thing. So I do wonder. I know Chasing Ice got the song nomination all those years ago, but I do wonder how the branch will respond to it for that reason. So I'm not quite so high on that one in terms of nomination. What did you guys think?
Um, I liked it. I think the end, the way that they show that time lapse is really effective. But I agree with you, Daniel, about tying it to the feature. Um, I was just like, oh wow, I haven't heard Jay Ralph's name in a minute. I feel like him and Diane Warren need to have a cage match fight. Um, but no, I like that one for. I thought the imagery was really kind of staggering, but I kept feeling that as I kept going through the list, I kept thinking of the feature too, exactly like you said. So I'm wondering if that will translate. Um, the thing that I was most impressed with, armed only with a camera, is that they showed us so much. It's sort of like an unflinching look at a photojournalist. And I was really impressed with that it didn't go from these are all the things that he did and then he died. It was like he died, he was shot, here like literally showing us his body. And then they show us the other things that he had done leading up to that. I thought that was a really interesting way to structure the story, and that's the thing that I like the most about that. But I like them both.
I feel like I've seen a lot of films recently that have to do with war reporting. I'm thinking of stuff as different as Civil War, which obviously is the narrative. The Lawless directed documentary that was screened at Sundance.
Mm.
Um, Name is escaping me at the moment. And even something like 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, which is not, not journalism in the same way, but I don't know. It's definitely ties in, and I feel like even if you don't respond especially to this particular story, it's very resonant and talks about a lot of other things. as I'm looking
Yeah.
at the five films that I said I thought would be nominated, I'm looking at like three or four others, and I'm like, well, those have to get in. So I feel actually I've said this many times that seeing the films is actually a disservice to your predictions because you're like, well, here's some logic and here's some other things. And I guess documentary, in a sense, is the easiest out of the three because there are that's how I feel at least, because there are certain tastes and certain themes. But I feel like, it never is at all what I think it's going to be. Do one of you
Hmm.
want to start with your predicted five before we get into our preferences?
I'll lay mine out, and you guys
Sure.
can talk me out of them. Okay.
Okay.
So I like I said earlier, you can't bet against Netflix. So I've got Netflix in there. All the empty rooms. I do have Perfectly a Strangeness. I think Jay Rosenblatt. He's right now he's 2 for 2. So I'm gonna bet on him going 3 for 3. Have Heartbeat in there. I do have All the Walls Came Down. Like you said earlier, the LA Connection. I just think it's strong enough that that's going to really resonate. And then, yeah, I have a list of like five for that last spot.
It's hard.
It's really tough. So talk me out of this. Right now, I'm going with Armed Only with a Camera because I do think the journalism nature and how unflinching that is it will go over really well for the branch. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. I could easily swap these out.
Okay, so I have All the Empty Rooms, All the Walls Came Down, Heartbeat. I have The Devil is Busy. Um, and then that last spot, I really want to put a Perfectly a Strangeness in just because it's sort of like an apple and a bag of oranges. Um, but I think I'm gonna go with Children No More. I think as of right now, when I put up my written predictions, they may be different.
The two that were different on your list than mine are on my like. I want to fit them in, but I just didn't. Yeah, I think those are
Yeah.
really solid picks.
I agree with both all the films for sure. And with Jay Rosenblatt, I have those three. I did say Perfectly a Strangeness. I had picked Classroom 4 for the fifth one because I feel like that film's going to have a lot of support. I feel strange leaving out Bad Hostage because I feel like that one has a particular hook to it. Last Days on Lake Trinity, which I think a lot of people will respond the way that you guys did, and The Devil is Busy. So I am the fact that we agree on three of them makes me feel a little bit better, but not as good as I'd like to feel. Do you want to share your if you were voting, what would be your top five here?
Ooh.
I wrestled with my top five. Here's what I landed on. Um, the one I loved the most was Last Days on Lake Trinity. I really responded strongly to that one. Number two, All the Empty Rooms, just devastating. Cashing Out for how fascinating that story was and just something I had no clue about. I really love We Were the Scenery, just for how comedic that was for such a tragic subject. It was really light and fascinating at the same time. And then The Devil is Busy because it's just really unflinching.
Yeah, I like Joshua Seftel's work a lot, so I would put All the Empty Rooms in. I love Chasing Time. The Devil is Busy. There's so much here. I love Classroom 4. Sorry, not Chasing Time. I meant Cashing Out. So sorry. All the Empty Rooms, Cashing Out. The Devil is Busy. Bad Hostage. Perfectly a Strangeness. I think that's what I would do. Them donkeys.
Okay. I don't have mine in any particular order, but we'll go alphabetically. All the Walls Came Down, Cashing Out, Classroom 4, The Devil is Busy, and On Healing Land, Birds Perch.
Mm.
So there's definitely a lot of good. I like that we got to a lot of these here, and again, a good crop. And we wish all the filmmakers plenty of luck in this. So we should now transition to something at the very least shorter. I feel like it has to be at least maximum half the length total. Daniel, do you want to intro us a little bit into the animated short category?
Yeah, a lot of great options for animated short this year.
Oh
Like you
yeah.
said, much shorter than it usually is, but or than the other categories, I should say. But also a lot stronger of a crop this year than I feel like there it normally is. I feel like there's often a lot of shorts that are just kind of a slog to get through or too out there this year was really strong crop. At least in my opinion. I'm curious if you guys feel the same. I feel like where the best place to start is maybe with the biggest like studio name in the mix here, which is Cartoon Saloon, of course, and so with Aru, which premiered with Little Amelie. I mean, it's getting rave reviews. It's one of the more widely seen shorts as well, and so I do think, Cartoon Saloon has been nominated one time in this category in the past. They had an almost unbroken run in Best Animated Feature nominations, and I do think there's going to be enough support for the studio itself to back Iru getting in for a nomination. What do you guys think of that one?
I think the colors really smack you in the face. The oranges, I like the sort of, there's a lot of there's something about like the sharp corners of a lot of things that I love. And I feel like that is a movie. I haven't heard of anybody that dislikes that movie. And it's got like, I hate saying this, but like a really root for the character kind of quality. I just keep thinking of that girl's like huge thing of hair just like flopping around. I don't know. I love it. I love that movie.
It reminded me a lot of Brave, and I had to check to make sure because I remembered the face-off, Brave, Frankenweenie, and Wreck-It Ralph, and I was like, which one won? And I thought it was Brave, and it was. But I think I appreciate the spirit of coexistence and breaking down our perceptions. I feel like we could all use that. So I did appreciate that. I will say for something a little bit less friendly, I was intrigued to see what I would call two horror animated shorts in here, which are also not even really horror if you're to get very technical, but definitely somewhat horrifying in what they depict.
Hmm.
The Quinta's Ghost was really immersive and just like sort of traps you in there a little bit. Whereas playing God, you're just like, what is going on? And also like it's short. That is really one of the shorter ones, but you're still just it's hard to not be phased by that.
I was so into playing God. I
Me
thought that was
too.
incredible. It's so good, and the way it utilizes animation as a medium. It
Hmm.
utilizes the animator, the sculptor, whatever, as a character. I think is going to go a long way. It is so immersive and really like creepy and gross. Like
Hmm.
I think it's extraordinarily well done. That's one of my favorites for sure.
I have to say, someone who told me to check that movie out is Brandon McMurray from Short Stick, and he told me, he's like, "Have you watched Playing God yet?" And I was like, "No," and I had a screener for it, and I watched it, and I knew nothing about it, and I was like, "What the fuck am I watching?" And it was just so. It doesn't look like anything else. It's like the horrible upside down version of Toy Story. It's like it's I love that you can kind of hear the visuals moving, like the stretching of the skin and the I don't know, the sound of the spit in people's mouths. It's sort of horrific and unflinching, but also it's really, there's a time lapse video on YouTube of the making of that movie and showing the artists moving with the movement of the animation, and it's a really gorgeous example of fantastic stop motion animation. I'm so into playing God, so into that movie.
I feel like we didn't have a lot of, straight comedies in here. There's definitely some funny
Mhm.
parts of, Autocar and Cardboard and The Three Sisters. But to me, the real comedy in here was Hurricane. I'm not sure my accent is as good as it should be, but that was just one which was like I feel very embossed, maybe is the right word. I feel like it was like coming out of the screen at me, and I enjoyed that. And even if, there's not a lot that happens, it's just like it's fun. And especially with some of these creepier and, other things, it's nice to have a little break like that. And I thought that was really cool.
It's rare watching these shorts as we all do that I want to see more of any of them.
Mm.
And with Huracan, that was one I was like, I would watch so many more shorts with this character because it's the vibes of that movie were so great. It was just a trip of him just exploring this city on this fateful journey. I thought it was funny and weird and chill at the same time. I really dug what that was doing.
Yeah, I just like how also just the composition of the character, not composition, the design of him, like, oh, a man with a pig head. And you just buy into it and you just go. It's just, I don't know, in this kind of like oddly relatable, romance that he wants to pursue and him running down the street. I don't know. It's just it doesn't look like anything else, black and white. It just looks really cool. So yeah, I dug that one too.
The other real outlier from this crop that is totally unlike the rest, Retirement Plan, which is also one of the shortest, but some of these films are silent or near silent. Retirement Plan is all talking, and it's like your whole life you're watching in that short. And especially Donald Gleason's voice, like there's just so much about that is like you pulls you right in and then just leaves you to contemplate like what's going to happen and what's not going to happen for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's the simplest, but also it packs a real punch. It kind of it felt like I don't know, kind of like a New Yorker cartoon come to life. Like it's just got this
Mm.
simplicity to it, but the narration is so well written that it really, for me, it really struck me at the time of my life. So yeah, that was a very well deserved place on this list for sure.
Yeah, the just the design of him reminds me a lot of my dad. So the first time that I watched it, I was an easy get with this. And there's a universality to that short that I think a lot of people can connect with. And the last time that I watched it, I actually typed out every single thing that he said. It was a lot harder than I expected to type out every single thing. It took me a couple times to go through it to do it. But if you look at just like the script and the words, I think it's actually sort of like it it feels more poetic than you expect it to be. So I feel like that was also a very successful. It's had a very successful run on like the short circuit. It's grabbed like every award under the sun. So I feel like that's one to watch for sure.
When I think of very striking animation and just using the storyboard very visually creatively, I'm struck particularly by two shorts, Butterfly and I Died in
Mm.
Irpin. I think Butterfly, just seeing him like swim into the next scene in the future was just so haunting. And especially like I again, I always like to ask, like, is this going to be a feature? And it's like, that's not a feature. That is the whole film. Like you see his story there
Mm.
and it is like start to finish. And I think that is so interesting. I Done in Urban is definitely not the whole story, but the incorporation of like live action footage, like that was to me just very, very compelling because I feel like it's something that we've sort of again it's been covered a lot in a lot of different films, some aspects, but this is just like here's the reality of like I'm in a relationship and like living somewhere that's not safe and like here are all my memories sort of scattered and assembled, and that was sort of very jolting to me.
Yeah, I Died in Irpin took me by surprise. This is a good example, I think, of when people who may not have checked out the short list before, like it's like, oh, they just expect it to be like 13 or 14 like Disney style movies. I think it's a really great representation of different animation from around the world. And I have to say, Butterflies, the thing that I like about the animated short list, and I don't know if this is right, but what I think is I think people respond to a lot of style of animation if something doesn't look like something they've ever seen before. And Butterfly is something that when I watched it, I was like, how the hell did they do this? Like the sort of you can see the paint strokes, the transitions are mind blowing.
Yeah, I felt the same about Butterfly. The style of animation, like you said, Joey, and then also connecting it really like the style isn't just for style's sake. It really connects to the fluidity of the swimming main character, and so it felt like a perfect match of medium to the story. And it's a weighty story as well. It touches on the Holocaust and perseverance, and
Mm.
so I responded really positively to that, and I do think that's a strong contender for a nomination because of all of those things.
There's so much good stuff here.
Yeah. Snow Bear is interesting to me because it's so understated reminded me a lot of Robot Dreams, the animated feature nominee. But what was so interesting to me is when I talked to the filmmaker, he said that like the film that he loved this year is Avatar, Fire and Ash. I'm like, I could not
Mm,
think of something that could be further from the simplicity, like the beautiful simplicity of Snow Bear. And so I just love that juxtaposition that like here's a very like tight, sweet little film, like not a lot happens. It's about loneliness and like whatever. And then you have something like Avatar, which is the least low key thing you could possibly think of.
subtle, James Cameron's subtle entry, of course.
Yeah, what did you guys think of Snow Bear? I really loved the. It felt like it jumped out of the Disney Renaissance. It really felt like
Uh,
obviously Aaron Blaze's time was the early 2000s and late 90s, and it felt like it jumped out of there. And so I really responded well to that. And it's one of the more high profile shorts, along with Eru, because he's really built up a big social
oh
following
yeah.
in documenting the process of this. So I am curious. I see a lot of people predicting this to get a nomination, largely because of his high profile. But a high profile doesn't always translate to nomination. So I am kind of curious.
I, there are two movies on this list. Yeah, on the animated short list that both have bears. They both, I cried like an idiot to both of. Um, the thing I love about Snow Bear is that I felt like, and I don't know if I've ever thought this before, like I thought I felt temperature from it. I really responded to like the brightness of the light, how snow looked different depending on the time of day. I felt like I could feel, I don't know if you ever see snow and you can kind of feel the temperature of the snow. I kind of felt that from from this movie. The pinks and the blues I thought were really effective. I actually think that Snow Bear has a really good shot of winning. uh, but I don't know if that's my Beauty and the Beast love bias. I don't know. When I interviewed him, I was just like, hey, I love Beauty and the Beast. Like my phone case is a Frome of Beauty and the Beast. Like I'm a freaking loser here, but um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if his presence will help him to get a nomination, help him get a win. I'm not sure, but I think that people won't take that for granted.
Yeah, there's another story that sort of I felt was very immersive because some of the other ones that I rattled off quickly, which we should talk a little bit more about, are just a lot briefer as opposed to The Girl Who Cried Pearls, which I feel
Mm.
like is like this big story that's larger than life, but has a twist. And it's like the pearls, especially, I feel like is one thing that animation really lends itself to because if you're watching that and it's live action, it's not going to have the same impact. And so there was something that just felt magical about it that I assume without animation would have just felt very two-dimensional.
Yeah, that's a movie where I really responded to like the texture of it, like the texture. Like I was a little obsessed with that pawn shop too. Like I wanted to like go through and look at through all the drawers and the sort of luminescence of the pearls themselves is so gorgeous. And I don't know why I something that I love about it is like what most of the movie is a memory or a tale or a fable, and the mouths don't move, but like when we see the person telling the story, the mouths do move. I don't know why that stuck out to me. But yeah, that's a movie where I responded to like the texture, and I'm a sucker for that kind of animation, so I loved all of that.
And it's also directed by some of the only former nominees on the list. So they were nominated quite a few years ago. I don't remember how many years off the top of my head, but I do think that this style is reminiscent of a lot of films that get nominated often, and I think the fable sort of nature of it really will appeal to especially older voters. But I really dug what it was doing. I did notice the mouths not moving in the fable portion. It almost looked like
Yeah.
marionettes. I don't know if it
Mm.
was or not, but that's what it reminded me of. It was very unique, and I think it really amplified the story that was being told. The story within the story of this short was really interesting, and the animation paired perfectly with it.
I do always try to give these film my full attention, but sometimes if I like look away for a minute, especially with animation, it's tough because you might miss something big. And the Three Sisters was definitely that experience for me. It's like I was like, nope, I cannot look down. There was no like this is all happening on screen, and it's like not a blink or you'll miss it kind of thing, but still like you really have to be focused to appreciate the fully visual comedy. It's like it's the anti-retirement plan, right? It's the opposite. Like watch those two for the full sensory experience if you squash them together.
Oh man, I love this movie. Um, it kind of reminded me of a lost animated episode of The Golden Girls, kind of. Um, my husband and my friend who watched it with me, they kept they kept calling it Boob Island. Um, I don't know. I just like the movement of it, the way they just like walk like this, and it's I don't know. I thought it was gonna be one thing, and it wasn't that at all. It was just so it was like silly and it had such a specific sense of humor, and the colors really pop out at you whenever they come out. But yeah, the sort of Dorothy Spornak, I guess, of it all, I loved.
Yeah, not knowing anything about it before watching it is a fascinating experience because on the when it starts, it really looks like it's going to be a very serious like downer of a movie or something, and it's just not. Not only is it not a downer, it's very horny. It's a very horny
Yes.
short, which was very unexpected. But yeah, I thought this was hilarious. I was really caught off guard by this one.
By the end of us watching it, the me, my friend, and my husband, every time I think the only thing you hear I guess the sailor or the captain, he goes, "Ha!" We just we kept doing it as the movie kept going. Yes, who knew the horniest movie on the short list? I love it.
Also, I think the only thing it did say was that it was from Israel, which is also a complete miss. Like, doesn't guide like this is literally like slightly Christian, but also not at all. Like, it's just it was completely not at all the right guidance that I would have thought.
Yeah.
So, I did again. We're talking that there are some things that were slightly funny. Autocar, even though it has a bit of like a fright element, did have a bit of humor, and I appreciated that was also pretty simple in its premise, but more sort of draws you in a little bit more with its execution.
Yeah, I love how that one the frights are really like under the surface. It's a child's journey on a bus, but the all the journey that she's going on, with all the anthropomorphic animals, it's cute and unsettling in a lot of ways. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, I like when animation kind of doesn't explain stuff to you. You kind of get that more and more international shorts where like I don't know, like near the end when she's wearing the coat or the cape and then you see it lay down, it becomes like a landscape and she's moving through it. Or I love that stuff. And I thought it did a really good job of showing kind of like the perspective of a child. I really was concerned because I Googled like as I was watching, I was like, how long is it from for where was she going? For somewhere to Brussels? And I was like, how long is that ride? And it's like 12 hours. And I was like, you are gonna leave your child. I was really concerned about the safety of the child. Um, but yeah, I really liked how like almost innocent that was. And I thought the animation was really vibrant and striking too.
Non sequitur about European distances. I remember reading some story about some woman who made a wrong turn picking up someone from a local train station and entered in and out of 5 countries trying to get there, which is like just so absurd, but something us here in the US we can't quite understand. It's like if you're on the north in the Northeast, sure you can go through a bunch of states, but even so, you'd probably have to notice at a certain point, especially because there's like signs and everything.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about a child's perspective, I think cardboard, actually the rest of the, Shyness of Trees, Night Boots, Forever Green Cardboard, there's something sort of not childlike, but something innocent and simple about all four of those. Daniel, do you have some thoughts you want to start with on whatever the right order is for those?
Yeah, as a dad, I really dug Cardboard. I thought it's sort of the kind of the straightest comedy on the list, maybe, because it's kind of just it reminded me a lot of like early Pixar shorts or like late '90s, early 2000s Pixar shorts in the sense of like it's kind of straightforward. It's a dad taking care of his kids. uh, freaked out about the trailer park and has to figure it out. And there's imagination. But I liked what it was doing. As simple or straightforward as it is, it worked for me. You know, I'm a dad with two boys. It just really worked for me.
That was the last one that I watched, and I knew because when I saw like all of the shorts all in a line, I was like, I'm saving the one with the pig in a car for last because I know unless it would have like some horrible, circumstances where wherever that car goes, I don't know. But yeah, I totally agree that it reminded me of like an early Pixar short. I actually went back and I wonder was like, is this like a Sparks animation short? I wasn't sure. Um, but yeah, no, I love that one. That was I don't want to say it felt easy, but I mean like it was a more touching story than I expected to.
When you've got shorts that deal with like the Holocaust and migration and Ukraine, it is the easy, it is the lightest,
Yes,
for sure.
yes,
I think historically there were times when the live action race, everything was just so draining. And there was one year was the other way around, and animated was like all miserable, miserable, miserable stuff. So we have a pretty good mix here. And I feel like Forever Green and The Shyness and Trees sort of go hand in hand for me in a lot of ways. I feel like there's, again, something simple and easy about them, but also a different way of looking at things that we sort of see every day.
Yeah, and similarly to Snow Bear, Forever Green hails from Disney animators, and so I know that's being talked about a lot. So you can never ignore a Disney connection, whether it's going to make for a nomination or not. It's a part of the conversation. I liked it. I liked it. I thought the animation looked really handcrafted, which is what was so interesting about that one. It kind of looks like it's whittled out of wood. I know it's computer animation, but it really does look sort of whittled out of wood, which I
hmm
thought was an interesting standout of the shorts.
yeah. It felt like I thought I was even going to have like a almost like a Lego movie moment where like the camera would pull out and we see that like there are people playing with these toys. I love that the sort of like blocky nature of like the bear. Like when you see water running, it definitely looks like I can't really describe it, but you know what I mean. It's got like a wooden toy kind of quality to it. So I'm glad at least they're just if there are going to be two movies about bears on one list, they look totally different tone, totally different story. I'm down.
So do
I
the
like
two
bears.
shorts about pigs. They're pretty
That's
different.
very true. Yes, very very true.
That brings us to The Night Boots, which I also think, could be a horror short if you read it the wrong way. It's again just talking about the way that we look at things and how sometimes they seem much larger and much more terrifying than they really are.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this is an example for me personally of responding to the style of animation, like the charcoal drawings. I was doing a little bit of research on it. I don't know, I like the shape of the big eyes of everyone. I will say though, my husband at least like 3 or 4 times, he was like, "What kind of animal is that? What is it?" And I was like, "Shut up! It's an animated short on the short list. Nothing needs to be explained to you." Just um yeah, that's another one that I felt like you could feel the innocence of the story perspective, like you said, is very key. I like that one too, but I think I personally responded to like the style, the black and white. Yeah.
Well, I think we there's a lot of good stuff on here. You guys have convinced me to put Eru in. I had three sisters, and I'm swapping it out for my predictions. The
Hmm.
Girl Who Cried Pearls, Playing God, Snow Bear, and Retirement Plan. Seems like a pretty easy thing, which means I'm going to get 0 out of 5, and none of these are going to get nominated.
I'm trying to. I have Snow Bear, Retirement Plan, Playing God, The Girl Who Cried Pearls, and I'm struggling with that last spot. I'm gonna say Eru.
Well, interesting. I think we have some very different predictions here. I do have Eru and Playing God and the Girl Who Cried Pearls. I guess did we all have those three?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I'm
So they're
five for
not
five with Joey. I'm 5 for 5, so you're
okay.
the outlier.
If you're wrong, I'm wrong. So
That's right.
So
It's the worst.
I feel really strongly about Butterfly. I feel really strongly
damn
about
it.
that getting a nomination because of the subject matter and the style. So I'm sticking with that getting in there. And then for that last spot, I really wanted to put Snow Bear in there. I don't know. Something is just telling me it's almost too. I don't even know what it's to. It's just maybe too Disney is what's keeping me from putting it in, honestly. Um, so I have Autocar as the last one
Mm,
there. But yeah, really close with Snow Bear, really close with Shyness of Trees. We actually kind of didn't talk too much about that one, but just the way it touches on grief, I thought people might respond to really well. And then the I Died in Irpin is also very close for me because of the Ukraine connection.
mhm.
I do have Butterfly and Hurricane, and I did an Urban on my own list, along with The Girl Who Cried Pearls and Retirement Plan. That's my five if I got a vote here.
Damn. Um, my personal would probably be Butterfly, The Girl Who Cried Pearls, very similar to my regular predictions, Playing God, Retirement Plan, and Snow Bear.
Wait, is are those the same? Are you
The
predicting your
only
Yes,
one
they
favorites,
is
are.
I
Joey?
wouldn't I flipped see here's the thing. The five that I named as my predictions, I might take out Eru in my predictions and put in Butterfly. So one of them has Eru, one of them has Butterfly. Whichever one gets nominated, I'll say that's what I predicted. That's what I'll do.
There you go.
Yeah.
My favorites, Playing God is far and away. Like that is my number one, and it's not
Oh,
even close. I love that one because it's yeah,
so
it's
creepy.
it's so creepy, so gross. I really loved Eru. That's on their Retirement Plan. I connected to a lot. Loved the Quintus Ghost. Loved the style of that one, and then like I already talked about, Huracan. I thought was really wonderful.
I will say, in terms of personal preference versus what gets honored, I did my best ever Oscars score in 2021. That's release year. I hope you guys are release year people, also not
Hmm.
awards year. When it was very easy, I got 22 out of 23, and the only thing I
Wow.
missed was best animated short because I think it was Bestia I thought would win, but
Oh, I
my personal favorite windshield wiper won, and I didn't think they had the same tastes as me. And I was like, come on, that to miss that and to get everything else, to get all the Dune wins, like that was disappointing.
oh man. Bestia. Ooh, Bestia is so big and oh my God, I love that movie. There's a picture of Steven Spielberg holding like a little doll, the lead woman doll from Bestia. And I sometimes will just Google like Bestia doll. Like I want one so bad. As creepy as shit as that is, I want one. Yeah.
Well, I'm
Ugh.
sure you enjoyed when you talked to the Playing God filmmakers and they had the little thing right next to them.
Well, the weird thing was the camera kept it had something with he had a Santa hat on and the camera was doing something like when someone would talk, the camera would move, and like the the director, the statue was like right here, and every time he talked, the little statue moved in the frame, and the first couple of times I was like, like it just every single time. I got used to it, but yeah, that was fun.
I'd hope at some point he would just start talking and be like, a puppet or something.
I would run and scream and shut my laptop and run away. No way.
Well, Joey, why don't you take us into something I know you like a lot more than having to have nightmares about that, the live
Yeah.
action short category.
So I think live action short is very, very, very robust this year. I when I was making my predictions of the short list, which is basically a fool's errand because who can predict whatever. Um I could have there are 15 on the short list. I had honestly like 25 other movies that I could have seen landing on the short list. Um I will say if I could just pick out a couple that I think are a little bit ahead of the pack, I guess. I think there's three or four. There's two people exchanging saliva. I think those directors are everywhere. Everywhere. I ran into them at Telluride. They gave me a little pack of like garlic gum. It's over on my desk. That movie has like the support of Isabelle Huppert. It doesn't look like anything else on the short list. It's absurd. It's comedy. It's very topical. Has a lot of stuff in there. They're working their ass off on this circuit. So I feel like they're very much in the conversation. Also, it has a really eye-catching title.
Yeah, I was
Um,
I was gonna say that every year you can't discount the movies that have the weirdest or most eye-catching titles. And this year's
yeah,
actually a pretty tame year in all the categories for eye-catching titles. this is the one. This is the one that
Yeah,
is like people are going to vote for it just on the name alone.
yeah, it's kind of I feel like the absurdity of that title kind of makes up for like the lack of other weird funky titles around. Um so I think that's something that's getting a lot of eyes. The Singers is a movie that I personally really love. Sam Davis is the director. He was nominated as a producer for Nine and WIPO. No, I'm sorry. He also was the cinematographer, I think, of Period End of Sentence, which won Doc. He was the cinematographer of Dee Dee last year. People know who he is. It's a really it's based on a short story. I love that movie a lot. The cinematography of that, obviously, because he's a director of photography, is kind of insane. Um, and then a movie that I think is really around a lot. There's a lot more that I'm sure you guys can both attest to of people responding to the story. But I think the director of A Friend of Dorothy, I feel like he's everywhere. I keep seeing article after article. He's on social media a lot. A Friend of Dorothy, I think out of this list is one that kind of sticks out in terms of tone. It's more of a feel good movie. There's a, I mean, you can't go wrong with Miriam Margolyes. Is in it. She's very charming. Stephen Fry's in it. Who doesn't love Stephen Fry? I think it's a short that talks a lot about how um, the love of art can be a generational thing. How you can share art and how you can get people excited about the things that you love. Those are the three that I think are sticking out right now. But even as I look at this list, there's so much more. Um, I feel like there's so much passion for all of these movies. So someone stop me from talking.
No, I loved all of those a lot. I think there's like you said, there's a good balance of there's some heavy shorts on here and some lighter shorts like A Friend of Dorothy. On the heavier side, one of the big standouts for me was Rock Paper Scissors,
Mm,
which what is about a kid sort of in Ukraine and having to face off with these Russian soldiers and protect his people in a bunker. I thought that was really intense. I thought it was really intensely filmed, shot incredibly well, and so just the timeliness of it and how intense it is. It looks more or less. It could have been a feature. I mean, it really looks really impressive. So that was a huge standout for me.
and it won the BAFTA too.
That's right. That's right. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, two
that's a great
people
movie. Sorry.
Two People Exchange Saliva for me is the only film I had seen before the shortlist, and not even that. I actually
Mm,
saw it as part of AFI Fest 2024. So like remembered, I was like, oh, this movie is like because you never know what's going to happen with this stuff. And so I don't know why it was that it wasn't eligible last year. It isn't whatever. But I've been following Zara Mir Ebrahimi for a while with Holy Spider, Tatami, and she's just doing such great stuff and very intriguing, very dark and gray. And I want more. I want to see the whole thing, even though it's one of the longer shorts. I want a feature. I want a series. I want a franchise. I want to know more about this really creepy, creepy world. And that's a cool thing to sort of a vibe to get from the short. When usually it's like I can see a little more, or like that was enough to be like, yes, this is the dystopia I never want to visit but want to see all the time.
yeah, they're making a feature of it. It's even like the detail, like I mentioned, there's like a really like it looks like a couture black and white blocky dress that one of the characters wears, the married woman, the married character. And when I spoke to the directors, they told me this story about how I'm gonna botch it, that it's like it's based on an art. See, I'm blanking already. What the gentleman Alexander Singh, he it's based on like a language that he created for another art piece that he made. So if you want to read it, it's in my interview at thecontending.com. It's even like the attention to detail of how they created this world and what they don't explain to you, I think is really it really like lures you in. It's funny, but it's also really concerning. It's really absurd, but it's also really romantic, operatic, almost. I think a lot of people are going to be very taken with that. Yeah.
mentioned
Um,
the sing. Sorry, go ahead, Joey.
sorry, no, that's it.
The singers, I would just like to note the fact that it's based on like a 19th century story is so interesting because there's a very timeless feel to that movie. Sort of the opposite of something like rock, paper, scissors. Although one thing I noted with that was it is Ukraine, but it doesn't have to be. And I thought that was interesting because I know that they made a real effort to make it authentically Ukrainian, but I still think it feels very universal in terms of like innocent people are caught in war and like thrust into battle scenarios and things that they have no preparation whatever for and should never have to face. And so I think that really, really resonates. Separately, I also want to say about A Friend of Dorothy. I know that Miriam Margolyes and Stephen Fry are not Tilda Swinton and Pedro Pascal, but I still think about something like Pedro Almodovar, who has had very poor luck in this category. And I wonder if the most like I wouldn't call Zara Mir Ebrahimi the same, level of profile, which is a good thing for her own sake. But I do wonder if that ends up working against it, that we think that's going to be one that's going to do well. That said, it is pretty charming and it's hard not to like it. So maybe
Hmm.
I don't think I wouldn't say the same about Pedro's films. I wouldn't describe them as charming. I would describe them as interesting, but certainly don't have the same sweetness to them that this one does.
Yeah, that's the thing. I loved A Friend of Dorothy, but in terms of predicting the category, star power, it's hit or miss. Sometimes star power really pushes it over the edge, but more often than not, a lot of people like look at the stars in it and assume that that's going to get nominated, and then it just usually doesn't. So that's kind of my gut feeling right now on A Friend of Dorothy is that I really dug that one a lot, but I'm thinking the star power isn't going to help it as much as we hope it would.
Hmm.
But
Interesting. I don't know. I just wonder if the because it feels a little bit different than everything else. I wonder if that is going to have the stick out quality to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it totally could. I mean, there are a couple like more straight comedies on this. A Friend of Dorothy is I wouldn't call it a clear cut comedy, but it definitely has a lot of lighter moments. But Jane Austen's period drama is one of the. I mean, it's a spoof movie. How often do we get spoof movies on
Hmm.
these short lists? I that was the first on this short list that I watched. It was the very first one, and it was not at all. I didn't look anything up about it before I clicked play, so I had no idea at all what it was about. Boy, that caught me off guard, and I was kind of into it. I thought it was. I laughed out loud. I thought it was a lot funnier than I expected it to be. I did not think that I would be actually into a spoof movie if it made it onto this list, and yeah, to my surprise, I kind of dug it.
I enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it even more than I did. She was laughing the whole time. She caught some references I wasn't necessarily paying attention to as a, man not as tuned into the female body, which is obviously the big joke of this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I don't know. I thought it was a lot of fun and has a certain vibe to it that's like historical, but obviously such a send up. And it's again, it's rare to find something that's really funny on here. And there's one other I would say might come a little close, but this one is like its own thing.
The fact that I just had to pull up the IMDb page. The fact that you can have well, number one, the fact that that this is such a like almost like tool to teach people about certain aspects of the female body is great. The fact that you have characters named Estrogenia, Mrs. Bits, Dr. Bangley, Virginia, and Mr. Dickley, and Lavinia is if the fact that it kind of like slides by you at first, and then it's just like the sort of like I say this affectionately, like stupidity of that, but also the intelligence that's infused with the humor as well. Just thinking about it, I just watched it before we jumped on, and I forgot how funny I thought it was. So yeah,
And how authentically it's filmed. It does feel like a like a period piece, no pun intended. Like it
yeah.
really does feel like a Jane Austen film, which I think is great. Their commitment to getting this right, it really went a long way.
And if My Year of
Yes.
Dicks can get nominated, I don't see why Jane Austen's period drama can't. I also really liked Pantyhose. I thought that was one that, like, even if you don't fight about the same things, the idea of being late and like, oh, you're late, so you start doing something else. And the person's like, oh, no, no, you're doing something else, so I'm going to go do this. Like, there's just so much of it. And it also has like an emotional punch. So I think that was a nice, rewarding one that you don't necessarily see coming, but starts off in a very, very relatable way that every couple has to be like, some of that is us.
I feel like pantyhose is a perfect use of the short medium. That's why I really like that. Like it's this shouldn't be a feature, you know? Like this wouldn't work as a feature. It perfectly works as a short, as one just moment of their evening. And I really admired what they did in capturing it all in sort of one shot. And yeah, just the way that their relationship sort of devolves over the course of this short, I think was really well written.
I felt very attacked by this movie because I'm the person who's always uh I was the lady in this situation. I have basically the attention span of mustard, and I can't. I do one thing and then I start four other things. The visual payoff at the very, very, very end, right before they walk out the door, had me howling. Um, and the sort of middle section when the camera goes close up to them at the door and she says like, "I'm scared of you." I was really surprised that it kind of took that direction, and it made me excited to see where the short was going to go. I feel like there's something unexpected about it. So yes, attacked, and they will be hearing from me.
I think that's it for the fun in this category that we get pretty serious. The Pearl Comb, though, I must say, as I said, I watched some of these films with my wife. She was not happy about that one. We should have looked it up ahead of time. That said, had we looked it up ahead of time, I don't think we would have expected it. And I loved talking to the filmmaker and hearing that he did stand up and magic. And somehow this is the movie that he made. It is completely the wrong indicator of anything. But I think this is one that for if we who was just straightforward narrative, let's add a little bit of genre and darkness in there. And so it's not just like depressing, it's just like a little frightening. And I think that's at the very least surprising and cool.
Yeah, I love not looking this up before watching it because I had no idea where it was going. I think the horror may be too strong of a word, but just, you know, sort of some of the frightening elements of it work really, really well here, especially where the short goes in the very end. Really caught me by surprise. I think the visual effects in it are also very well done. It looks great for as many special effects as I assume that there are in this one. So yeah, a lot to admire about the Procom. I really, really dug that one.
Oh damn, I love this movie. It's so it's so it's so like handsome. I hate saying that, but like it's handsomely made. It's so like I feel like with a period film or like a genre film, you kind of sometimes like, especially that's a short, you kind of like lean in a little bit to kind of like I don't say catch stuff, but it's just sort of like short films are made not to make money. Like that you make short films because you're passionate about the story. No one makes a short film to make money off of it. And Ali Cook, who directed it, he's like the most affable, nicest guy in the whole world. And I was really taken by that. And I was like, you made this movie with like all the amazing political stuff in it about gender and um bloody mermaids, and the shot in the tank near the end is that shot haunts me. It's so great, and the even like down to the smallest detail of like the shape of the comb is even like important to like the story. I don't know. I think I was so happy that this got shortlisted because you don't see movies like this on the short list like ever.
I want to call out one of the films that I knew I was interested in and was very pleased once I saw it, which is Butcher's Stain. I feel like hostage posters is something that has been like a big part of my life, and I've seen a lot of things about that. Usually it's been a very volatile and negative thing. And I really compare this a lot to an Orange and Jaffa, that it's a film
Mm.
about Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is not about war. It is not, there's not no killing, there's all thing. And it has a little tiny bit of humor of like coincidence in there, which I thought was really cool. But I like it because I think it is very layered. I think it is certainly true to life. This is an experience that the director is actually someone who's Israeli who observed this kind of discrimination rather than was a victim of it himself. So that's also an interesting thing that's sort of elevating a different point of view. But I think there's a lot to talk about. I don't know that it's going to make the cut because I think people don't know exactly how to feel about it necessarily. But I think it is very interesting. I really appreciate it. And I it's certainly very current. This is something that, is again been something that's dominated. I'm not good. I go on X or Twitter and don't I do the for you rather than the following. So I get all these like really, really terrible people whose stuff I don't want to see. And so it's nice to get something a lot more nuanced and like here's something that exists in society that like we should talk about, but not like cutting off and like talking about it, which I really like that.
Yeah, this is something I don't know how to describe it, where it's kind of it takes a topic that is very very much bombarding all of our, daily lives. We hear about it all the time, but it really like yanks it down to a really intimate personal level. I think that's kind of what you're speaking about, Abe. And it's yeah, the performances are great. The I really like this one too. It's very well acted, very thoughtfully crafted, and it sort of is has something where I think this is a short where you kind of want to talk about it with people afterwards. I certainly did with the crowd that I watched it with. And an orange from Jaffa is a great comparison too. Yeah.
Yeah, I also love. I don't know if restraint is the right word, but the way that it ends, not really giving easy answers, not giving the
Mm,
explosion that you kind of want, the sort of emotional outrage that you I felt that I wanted in the moment. So I like that it doesn't give any easy answers. It's a lot more. It just felt like a very mature film, as
mm.
opposed to just shouting opinions that we hear all the time.
Feels like a good transition for me to Beyond Silence, which makes such excellent use of communication. And I particularly love when, how the camera moves around to follow so that we still understand that the person who is not making noise as she's speaking is there. And she's almost like, wants to have that attention. This is the kind of thing where there's a whole universe besides this movie. And we just see this one little snippet. And it's so fascinating. And I think there's a lot to relate to even if you just know somebody who's been through something like that. And I love the use of sign language and the use of interpretation. And I just think there's so much within that this was one of the first ones I watched and it really stuck with me and has carried through as one of my favorites since the beginning.
Uh, I love this movie so much. Um, there are a couple of movies that are on here, sort of like when we talk about documentary about like based on experiences, like when we talk about a dude that's based something, it's very personal. Boy with the White Skin, um, A Friend of Dorothy to a certain extent. This is God, I want to see this as a play. Like I just think it's so like sophisticated. Like I just think I think it's such a beautifully delicate, but also has a sort of like a righteous anger within it. Some of the cinematography I love in here. There's a shot near the beginning where the professor is standing in a window, and this is just me putting something onto it, but it's when you can see one of the students behind her, the deaf student. For a split second, it looks like their costumes are the same color. And I don't know why that stuck out to me. It's I don't know. There's Marnie Block who directed this. I could listen to her talk about this forever. So I'm just rambling about it now. But I this is one of my favorites on the list, and another one that I think will get people talking.
Yeah, I think sophisticated is exactly the right word, and it also felt really like intricately stitched together in the way
Mm.
that it's written, the way that it bounces from the friend translating to back and forth. The conversation between the three of them is really tightly wound, and so I really appreciated the writing in this one.
I think it's also been a great year for deaf representation. I my One of my favorite interviews from this year, I was actually had to find a studio so I could speak with Marley Matlin and Shoshana Stern and their interpreters. And I've watched Shoshana Stern. I watched her in Jericho years ago, so I'm excited to see that like she's directing now and doing that. And Deaf President Now is one of my top 10 movies of the year. I love it. I'm despite my questions about it being eligible for the Oscar, I'm sad it didn't make the short list, but I think that is just such a cool film. Also, quick side note is that the film takes place during my birth, like I was born that week, which I think is really cool because you don't think about like what happened in the world then. And so I just thought that was very cool. But we're getting away from what we're talking about here, which is great. Movies that make us think about something else. You had mentioned Daniel, the boy with white skin, and I think that one is the most straightforward. There's one thing that happens, and that's it. But talking to the filmmaker, to Simon, basically he does documentary work where he watches this happen, and he can't film that, so he wanted to recreate that. And that in itself is like interesting enough. The notion that there's these people have magical powers and sing, it's like there is a lot to unpack there, and I think this is unlike a lot of what he does in some ways because it is a narrative, but also is it really a narrative? Like one thing happens, but like what an interesting way to bring a piece of the world that many of us will never visit just right there to us.
Yeah, there's is something very magical about that movie. Um, there's something about this is a world like I never thought that I was going to understand, be introduced to. I would never go down into a shaft like that, so I'm glad he brought it to us. There's something like even like the dust that's in there, like going across the headlamps. It looks like magic dust almost, and it's. I just feel like that is a movie that really takes you to a place you've never been to before, and I wonder if that is something that people will respond to. It's in a way it feels almost like a silent movie, but not really because obviously singing is a big part of it and whatever. But yeah, I like that one a lot.
We had talked a lot about star power earlier, and we did miss one, Ado, which obviously has Jennifer Lewis, and she is phenomenal in this movie. She has to do a lot. I mean, she is in almost every moment of this movie, and I think her performance is remarkable. For me, I'm not quite sure how well the rest of the short, stood up to her performance, but she is certainly a standout. What do you guys think of that one?
I appreciate the fact that it's about a school shooting, but we don't see things that could be very triggering and problematic. I like that there's a couple of very purposeful images, purposeful sounds, but I think that it's a topic that rightfully so is covered all the time. I mean, talking to the filmmaker, talking about how his kids have, school shooter drills, like, that's just, it's not something from our time that is so much now a reality. And so I appreciate that it's about something without being that. I know we've had that in the past. There was a live action short a few years ago too about in Atlanta, I think, someone who was able to talk down a shooter, if I remember correctly. Um, so I like that this is about something that we need to be talking about, but doesn't have the power necessarily to upset viewers in the way that it could.
Yeah, we also like we don't get to see like black folks doing Shakespeare like ever. Like other than like the tragedy of Macbeth. I mean basically on screen. Like you can see it on stage all the time, but it, I'm a huge fan of Jennifer Lewis, the sort of power that she holds as a performer. Um I think the director really utilizes her beautifully. And it's a sort of different kind of story than we are used to seeing about this topic. But I feel like seeing Jennifer Lewis just perform that text is worth seeing it alone in my book.
I do appreciate being able to relate to different experiences. I mean, as three white guys living in America, I feel like feeling like what it's like to grow up Japanese and Brazilian is not something that we specifically can, despite our own heritage and whatever else, can relate to. And I think Amarella does that again, closest in some ways to the boy with white skin in terms of like it is about one thing and that is what it is. But I like the fact that you get this, sense of a whole world and a whole identity, which again is specifically Japanese Brazilian, but also speaks to anyone who is made to feel like they do not belong in whatever way. And so I think we can appreciate that. I don't know that it's necessarily hopeful, but I do appreciate that it can make people feel seen while also being sort of like rock, paper, scissors, right? Very specific, but at the same time perfectly universal, which is a tough feat to pull off.
That girl, I don't have her name in front of me, but that girl in Umbrella is incredible. She really has a lot on her shoulders. She has to that the entire ending of this film is just trained on her and her emotions, and I think she kills it. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Abe. How universal that movie feels. I really liked what it was doing.
Joey, we want to hear you, but you're muted. You seem very passionate.
Ah, um, this is, I think, a really good example of how you can um take. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but like you kind of can take the experience of somebody else that doesn't look like you, and you may not share their specific experience, but you can take on the kind of feelings of hurt and helplessness that she might feel, like being teased, being taunted. That little girl is amazing. Like you said, Daniel, like holy crap. I was really impressed with her. And I gotta say, I, the image of her, that little bathtub. I love that little bathtub, the little blue bathtub. I kind of wanted to be like, I wish I had a bathtub for me to just sit in. I'm a very short person. Um, but yeah, no, I was really I saw this one, I think I can't remember where I saw it, but I was so excited to see it get shortlisted because of that little girl. She's amazing.
And a fitting transition from star power Jennifer Lewis to somebody else who this is the
Yeah.
start of everything. I like that. Well, I do want to talk about Butterfly on a Wheel because I feel like, I mean, after speaking to Trevor Morris, the filmmaker, understand that this is very much not as specifically his experience, but like in terms of OCD and other things. And what stood out to me most was the scene of cooking when the main character is cooking and it's specifically not him showing off. You would think that someone who is uncomfortable with having their routines examined or questioned would want to go somewhere where they're not the one who's like actually sort of performing or doing something, but it's the control that he has. And I appreciate that. This was one of the longer films on the list. I appreciate that we do get that there is a rigidity that is showcased in terms of like if you can control inviting someone to his own space is a very intimate thing, but the fact that he can control what's going on really shows you. And so I like that. I think more and more about all these things after the film.
Yeah, the thing that I love most about this, I appreciate what Trevor Morris does here. When I spoke with him a while ago, he said he wanted to make a story about like getting this young man like out the door. But also on a completely different level, we've all been to TIFF. I love Toronto as a city. And I think the movie is also like a really big love letter to that city. I loved seeing it again, because I love going there every fall. So I think there's a lot there. I think that it feels very personal, but also he's like paying tribute to a place that he loves, and I personally resonated with that.
And if you go ahead, Daniel, if you want, do you have more to say on that one?
Yeah, not more on that one. I was gonna bring up, I think the only one we haven't spoken on
We
yet,
have
which
two
is
left, and we have to end on one of them, and you know which one we have to end on. So let's talk about Extremist first.
okay. Yeah, Extremist. I really responded well to Extremist. Feels it felt very documentary like. It really felt like we were chronicling something that was really happening. The story of these lesbian activists in Russia who are doing something as simple that their act of rebellion is changing the text on price tags to have anti-war messages on there. But the way it plays out, the ending of that short is just incredible. I love the way that short and that whole final like whatever it is 30 seconds minute long is incredible. It's one of the best moments in any of these shorts. I was really blown away by how this ended.
Yeah, the use of color too, like the way that I totally agree. It does feel like a documentary in a lot of aspects. To sort of read the actual story about what happened to this young woman is kind of crazy. But that ending is a knockout in my opinion. Even the color of the things is even, and the shape of them is really really fun. If people can find a still image of it, they'll understand what that is. But like the use of color and contrast is really stuck out to me, and I love this movie. I love this movie a lot.
It's not one of the shorter films on the list, but it's definitely a short in that like she puts a sticker gets noticed immediately and gets arrested. Like I feel like in a feature we would have a whole exposition of like, here's her life, here's what she does. And so I appreciated that so much more of the time in this film was devoted to like, this is what happened. Now here's the trial and everything
Yeah.
else. And so it does feel very urgent as compared with some of these others, which will be interesting. I don't have it on my predictions, but I do think it certainly got a strong shot. I don't know about you, Daniel, but I know Dad's Not Home was the last short that both Joey and I watched, correct? So that has its own special place in our memories forever as a result. It reminds me a little bit, I don't know if you guys have seen Scrapper, this really great film with Harris
Oh, yeah.
Dickinson.
Hmm.
Reminded me a little bit of that, just in terms of like the semi-playful-ish tone, despite some really serious issues, simmering there. And so I thought this was interesting, just the sort of the tone really intrigued me on this one.
I don't know why I was reminded of An Irish Goodbye that won a couple of years ago. I can't really
Mm.
articulate what it was that connected those two in my brain. Maybe it's just the brothers, caring for someone, but it really felt exactly like you said, playful. It didn't feel as heavy as it could with this subject matter of taking care of a dad with dementia, but it really that the lead kid there really has a lot on his shoulders in this movie and carries it so well, and it's really really moving. I really really connected with this one.
This may sound really cheesy, but like it's I think it strikes a really good tone of like it could have been really grim and really dark, and it could have been they could have like dialed up the sort of playfulness, maybe the relationship between the two brothers, but I don't think it does either of those. It really takes from both sides and creates something of its own and kind of singular. The moment with the cake, that's all I'll say, was very upsetting to me, and I don't know, it was very effective. A lot of the acting in that it stuck with me a lot more than I expected.
We should agree this is the most difficult category to predict because anything could happen here. My
Ooh.
very uncertain choices for what I think will be nominated would be Beyond Silence, Rock, Paper, Scissors, The Singers, Two People Exchanging Saliva, which I shouldn't really be worried about, but I am, and Jane Austen's period drama. I don't see how you don't vote for that. If you're seeing all this, you just need something to lighten the mood a little bit.
I'm
I had.
torn.
Oh,
Go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, you go.
No, neither of us want to go. Okay. I have a bunch of those. I have Adieu, Beyond Silence, Friend of Dorothy, The Singers, and Two People Exchanging Saliva.
I really only feel confident in two. I feel confident in two people exchanging saliva. And for me, I feel confident in one you guys didn't say, I don't think, was rock, paper, scissors. Maybe you had that one.
Hey, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one I feel like it's got a lot of backing, and that's going
Yeah.
strong.
So those two, I'm like, yes, I feel great about those. From there, I'm like, dude, I don't know. What I wrote down is I wrote down Butcher's Stain and Dad's Not Home and the singers. Those are the ones I wrote down. But I have a do on there. I have extremist on there. I have Jane Austen's period drama on there. This really could go any direction other than those two that I'm sure of. Everything else, I'm like, dude, I really don't know how this category is going to shake out.
Because the like I said before, like the category was so like filled to the brim. I usually stress about live action shorts so much just because I usually cover more live action shorts than the other two categories. I feel so much stress normally predicting this category just because it is so full of really great movies before the shortlist, on the shortlist. I feel eerily calm. I was like, if I'm wrong and I go 0 for 5, that's fine because there's a lot of really good stuff here.
I also think
Very
both
weird feeling.
Amarella and The Boy with White Skin, I think, are typical choices. Like those are things that would
Yeah.
not surprise me based on historical selections in this. Both still more pleasant than some of the stuff that's been recognized in the past because there have been some real good but downers that have definitely been
There, there
there.
was there was like one year where the all like 3 or 4 of the nominated movies, I think I think Katie Rich from Vanity Fair. I'm putting words in someone's mouth. I think they called it like sort of like the tragic kid year because it was like kid gets stuck in quicksand, dies, kid gets shot, dies. So the movies that have children in here, it's a lot lighter. Thank God.
I would say that people actually do pretty well in this film, despite this category, despite two where things are pretty grim. I would say everything else actually works out a lot better than it
Yeah.
should, and it's not the two you think that are going to be the killers. So, for my preferences for what I would vote for, I would say Beyond Silence, Butcher's Stain, Jane Austen's period drama, Pantyhose, and Two People Exchanging Saliva. Three really serious and two really light.
Oh man, there's so much good stuff here. Oh God. Um, my preference, I would say Beyond Silence, A Friend of Dorothy, The Pearl Comb, The Singers, and I struggle between I'm gonna cheat and say six, Extremist, and Two People Exchanging Saliva.
Yeah, I have seven written down, so I'm gonna try to in my head cut two as I talk. The top two for me, The Singers is remarkable. I really love that. Two People Exchanging Saliva. Jane Austen's period drama just made me laugh so much. I really love the Pearl Comb, so that's got to go on there. And then for my last one, uh, boy, I'll go with Dad's Not Home. I really connected with that one.
Mm.
While I plan to still change some of my predictions in the other categories, I feel pretty like I'm a first draft, final draft kind of person. So I feel like for these, like we are nothing's going to really change my mind. The Eru thing, let's just do it. Sure, that's fine. Like otherwise, I'm pretty set. You haven't changed my mind on anything else, but we've been corresponding, the three of us, at least for a couple of years, about trying to find these shorts. I have never had an opportunity like this to get to talk about them in such
Oh
depth,
yeah.
and it is really wonderful because just seeing all of them is fun enough. Like that for me would be enjoyable, but the chance to actually go through and especially to hear from you guys about the ones that I wasn't even thinking much about, to hear that we all connected to something different, even just now, just about the technique versus other thing. Like we have so many different things that we're picking up on. So I will say to anybody watching that this is a fun endeavor trying to see all these, like just for the sake of it is definitely enjoyable. But to be able to talk about them with people and to see, you know, 30 films that aren't going to be nominated for an Oscar, but still deserve attention. I mean, Joey will tell you there's so many more out there that we should be watching all year round, and I don't know how he does it, but there's so much great stuff there, and it is really fun to get to be able to do this. So I thank you both for such a really terrific and not, I shouldn't say surprising, but wonderfully in-depth conversation.
Yeah, Abe, thanks for setting this whole thing up. I am really glad to talk about all of these. You know, I know Joey watches a lot more shorts than I do. I think I tallied up. I think there's 16 hours and 8 minutes of shorts here on the short list alone. And yeah, I'm really happy with how happy I am after having watched all of them because that's definitely not always the case. So I'm glad we could have a good time watching them and have this conversation about them.
Yeah, I gotta say that people I mean I fell in love with the shorts because you could see them in theaters. This was like years and years and years ago when they first started doing it. I felt so hoity-toity when I was able to like I went to the theater and I saw the nominated shorts. To have people that actually want to track them down and watch them is so refreshing. Nobody does this. Not very many people track down everything on the short list. So I was really glad that we could do this. And it's there's a lot of really great stuff here. Whether it's and don't you also feel like a weird sense of accomplishment? It's like I saw all 45. We're good. Like you don't have to hunt them down later. It's awesome. But it's I'm so glad I was able to talk so in depth with both of you because not many people do this. And I have to say for people that may be watching or listening that just as a giant nerd who loves short film filmmaking, like follow Short of the Week, follow Short Verse. Like the reason why there are so many movies to pick from is because there are hundreds and hundreds, literal hundreds of short films that literally get released every week. So they're around.
And we interview these people and they have so much interesting stuff to say. I like it when I talk to someone for 25 minutes and the film was 20 minutes. You know, it's just there's so much to say and it's really great. And so in a world filled with so many feature films and so many TV shows that you can't catch them all, make some time for shorts. They are very often, and especially this year, worth it. So thank you everyone for watching with us. You can find our handles and all that in the description here. But I hope we'll be back again soon. I don't know. We can talking about predicting the winners isn't nearly as fun because like we've already talked about how much whatever. But I will definitely still be soliciting your opinions, even if not in this public forum about that, and watching your last minute predictions to see, especially you, Joey, what you're going to change there at the last minute.
Yeah, very stressful. Down to the wire. It'll be like 7:59 on March 15th. So I'm like, ah! Won't do.
Well, thanks everyone for being with us, and we'll be back sometime soon.